It's good to be in the house of God this morning. And excitingly, we are here for the first Sunday. And wasn't Bob hospitable to all of us this morning? I mean, he gave us a warm welcome. He shook our hands. He helped us make coffee. I mean, literally, he welcomed us into this place that really he's helped remodel. He said when he took it on, it was a pretty empty, rundown building with him and about 12 rats. And now it's no longer the rats, but it's nice wood floors, the icicle lights, the nice kitchen, and a warm welcome that we got to have here at the Veterans Memorial Center. So we got to be thankful to God that He's given us such a great place to be for Sundays. You know, there's a guy once who wore a sandwich sign, and we don't see him too much. We've kind of moved into like those flipping signs with the arrows that people can do like all these crazy things on. But there was a guy who wore this sandwich sign one time, and if you know, it's a sign with a message on the front, and you wear it over your shoulders, and there's a message on the back. So you kind of walk around with this message in front and not behind you. We were out doing our car wash, and I was holding up the sign that said car wash for all the people coming on West 11th who were going west, and I was like, wow, if I would have had a message on the back of the sign, I could have done double time and reached both sides of the traffic. So this guy with the sandwich sign had it figured out. And on the front of the sandwich sign, it said, "I'm a fool for Christ." Wow. And he'd flaunt this thing around the streets, and he'd talk to people and it'd start conversations. Some people clapped him and cheered him on. Other people really scorned him. And either way, he was causing a little bit of a riot just by this sign that he was wearing. Not a physical riot, but a verbal. And on the back of the sign, it said, "Whose fool are you?" And so his message was who he was, and then the question was, who are you? Let's go to Psalm chapter 14, here in verse 1. You know, it's been said that everybody is somebody's fool. Psalm chapter 14, here in verse 1. The fool says in his heart, "There is no God." They are corrupt, their deeds are vile, there is no one who does good. Now this first fool that we're going to look at here in the Bible is the atheistic fool. This is the fool who believes there's no God, there's no judgment, there's no heaven and hell, and therefore their deeds and their life is vile. You know, excitingly, we're part of a worldwide family of churches that literally span over every continent and every populated continent, except for Antarctica, which God willing we'll get there one day. We'll have our Eskimo ministry. And excitingly, in the inaugural service for the Sydney International Christian Church, they had a picnic right after the inaugural service. And in Sydney, they play rugby. You know, we had a Memorial Day picnic. We played some football, we played some frisbee. If you want to learn how to truly dive for a tackle, talk to Everett. If you're there, you know Everett got fully horizontal and slid across the ground as he gave all his heart to go stop running. But in Sydney, they play rugby. And so they had the inaugural service, and many of the disciples came out, or all the disciples came out, and many non-Christians came out, and one person who came out was this woman by the name of Tegan Frawley. She was an atheist. She grew up in an atheistic household. She had atheistic friends, and she professed to be an atheist. Surprisingly, as she came out, not surprisingly to the disciples, but surprisingly to her, she was won over by the love of all the disciples. Wow. She saw them eat together, have fun together, enjoy studying the scriptures together, pray together. She saw the love. She started coming out and started to develop a faith in God because of the love of the disciples. Well, she went in and she started studying the Bible, and Tegan was the first baptism of the Sydney International. You know, now Tegan, she's engaged to Sean Valenzuela, and they are targeted in 2018 to plant the Melbourne International Christian Church. See, God can convert even the atheistic fools. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 5.
Come on. Go, Brian.
Here in Proverbs chapter 5, we find a very stern teaching from God.
Oh, yeah.
Proverbs chapter 5, here in verse 18. It says, "May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be captivated by her love. Why be captivated, my son, by an adulteress? Why embrace the bosom of another man's wife? For a man's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his paths. The evil deeds of a wicked man ensnare him. The cords of sin hold him fast. He will die for lack of discipline, led away or led astray by his own great folly. This here is the lustful fool. You know, the lustful fool believes it's okay to lust after the opposite or the same sex. Whether it's in their mind, in their actions. They believe that it's okay to watch pornography. They're in deep in masturbation, they're in immorality, and they're in all kinds of homosexuality. This is what the lustful fool looks like. If you're wondering, I just described much of our generation. The lustful fool, you know, and I think about, for me, this is exactly who I used to be. From a young age, about 6th grade, I discovered impurity in pornography. And I became someone who was enslaved to impurity. Led to immorality, and it led to me, who was somebody who was a womanizer. By the grace of God, as a young man, as Kareem shared about becoming a disciple, I was reached out to in the streets of New York City. I studied the Bible with about 6 other men who just showed me the truth and gave me the decision to truly follow Jesus with my life. And to the glory and grace of God, I've been a pure man for over 5 years. But this man or woman has to overcome being the lustful fool. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 12.
Come on, Brian.
Proverbs chapter 12, here in verse 1. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. You know, our third fool here is the stupid fool. You know, it's bad enough to be a fool, but to be a stupid fool is pretty bad. You know, what is it about this fool? This fool never gets advice. And in fact, they may get advice, but they disdain the input that they get. They rebel against discipling. They think that he or she knows better, even above what the scriptures say, because they're so enslaved to their feelings and their pride. This is the stupid fool. Proverbs 13, verse 19. A longing fulfilled is sweet to the soul, but fools detest turning from evil. This is the evil-doing fool. This person loves evil. They love to do whatever they feel like doing. They love to not turn away from their wickedness, but they love to pursue their wickedness and use it as an excuse to justify their wicked deeds. Even though confronted by this fool refuses to care or to repent of their wickedness. This is the evil-doing fool. Proverbs 14, here in verse 1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. This is the negative fool. This could be a wife, it could be a husband. This could be a man or a woman who's not even married. This is someone who always finds an issue and doesn't build others up, but they always have a problem with everything. They tear people down, negativity is constantly on their tongue, and nothing is ever good enough. This is the negative fool, and we see it right here in the Bible. Proverbs 29, verse 11. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. This is the angry fool. This fool, that fits of rage come at a moment's notice. You can't plan for it. It could be at home, it could be at work, it could be on the road, and the anger just comes and there's no stopping it. This person's embittered towards life, embittered towards God, towards situations, and towards other people, and even towards themselves. This is the angry fool. Let's go to Luke chapter 12.
Come on, bro.
Let's go see Jesus' take on another type of fool.
Yes!
Not yet, but soon. We'll be yes, God.
Come on, Brian.
Luke chapter 12.
I love this.
Not yet. But after this one. Luke chapter 12, here in verse 15. Then he said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool! This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God. This is the materialistic fool. Another word for this fool is American. Isn't that the American dream?
Yeah.
Build down, build up bigger. Get more. The more that you have, the more that you build up, the more successful you are. The more power you have, the more influence you'll be able to have over people. You know, I once saw a bumper sticker. Actually, I didn't see it. I heard of a bumper sticker that said, he who dies with the most toys wins. And I thought, wow, this is a fool who's living for this life. I like to think of it more of the t-shirt that I used to have was a no fear shirt. Or my buddy Robbie had it. And it said, he who dies with the most toys still dies. And I thought of that and I said, wow, that's so true. Whether you die with a lot or whether you die with a little, you're still going to die. I remember being in New York City and hearing about Whitney Houston's death. And I remember just thinking about her life must be just fantastic. And then it hit me. I was in Harlem. And it was just, wow, Whitney Houston's gone. I remember when Steve Jobs died, and I just was like, wow, like, Apple, like, the Mac Pro, like, the iPods, like, the iPhone, we depend on this stuff in our life, but Steve, he's gone. The only thing that now matters is not how many toys or how much influence this guy had, but is he in a right relationship with God? And today I don't want to do much more than mention the atheistic fool, the lustful fool, the stupid fool, the evil fool, the negative fool, the angry fool, or the materialistic fool. But this morning I want to talk about being a fool for Christ. Yeah. Point number one is the theology of a fool. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1.
Come on, bro.
Being a fool for Jesus Christ. You know, really, that's what it's going to take in this age to really stand up for and be a man or a woman of God. Amen. You know, Kareem clearly described that he was kind of looked at as a fool in the eyes of the world for going after the things that the eyes of Jesus says will actually make you rich in this life and in the life to come have eternal life. But to the world, being a solid disciple of Jesus who gives up everything and continues to live for this mission, to the world, it's very, very foolish. And for us to be a fool of Jesus Christ, we've got to have the theology of a fool. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, here in verse 18. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it's the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? And I think through the theology of a fool for Christ. You know, our theology is that we believe that God became man in Jesus Christ and showed us the perfect way to live our lives. We believe that Jesus was crucified on a cross, that he died, and that he literally was buried. And on the third day, he rose again, showing that he conquers death. And anybody who follows him too will be able to conquer death. Amen. This is the theology of a fool. And we got to be able to believe in a deep way that God came down so that we can come down as well, so that just like Jesus went up, we can go up as well. And the Bible says that God stoops down to make us great. And God literally stooped down as Jesus took on the full nature of the lowest servant and went up to heaven and showed us that we can too follow in his footsteps as we take on the theology of a fool.
Come on.
You know, the Bible, it's God's love letter to mankind. And if you haven't studied the Bible, I want to challenge you this morning to find time in your life to sit down with the people who invited you. Study out the scriptures and see what this love letter actually tells. And if it surprises you, let it surprise you. If it changes you, let it change you. As long as you become what the Scriptures teach, and you'll see the fruit produced in your life that's promised in the Scriptures. It's God's love letter to us, and there's clear direction, there's guidance to love God and to follow His Word to end up in the place where Jesus ended up. You know, I was thinking of it. When we understand this type of love, we're willing to become a fool.
Yeah.
Now, I gotta just be honest with you guys. I really wanted to see The Notebook when it came out.
Hey!
You know, I was in college, young guy, different state, you know. And The Notebook came out, and all these people were talking. I know the women in here love chick flicks, you know. And I know some of the brothers down inside you somewhere like the chick flicks as well. And love makes a fool of all of us. You know, I was, in college, I liked muscles, I liked working out, I liked being tough. And there's a side of me that wanted to watch The Notebook. And so what I did was, I rented The Notebook. I put it on in my room, and I watched The Notebook. And I had to watch it in 2 different intervals because, like, I watched the first part of it, and I was just like, and we had to go do something, I didn't want anybody to know I was watching it. And I longed to see the rest of The Notebook. And so I went and I watched the other part of it, and I was crying. Oh, one of my buddies opened the door, and he busted me. And he did not stop giving me a hard time for months. He even would call me The Notebook sometimes. But this love story made a fool of me. I just said, I want to see it, I want to know what it's about, and I want to understand this love. Your identity. Can you find your life in the Bible? I'm not talking about your life as the atheistic fool, the angry fool, the lustful. Not that identity. The identity of the fool for Christ, who says you're willing to do anything, give up everything, go anywhere for the mission and for Jesus Christ.
What's up, bro?
You know, as a family, I'm so excited we're going through First Principles. And if you don't know what First Principles are, it's the study series that we bring anybody through in order to cultivate and build a deeper relationship with God. We start out with learning how to see God. We start out with understanding the Bible's God's Word, with the lifestyle of a disciple. We learn what the kingdom is. We learn what it means to go from the darkness to the light. We learn what it means to be part of a church and the motivation of the cross. And then we count the cost to be faithful the rest of our lives. Then we get baptized and we can live as a fool for Christ.
Amen.
And I'm excited to keep going through and build our convictions deeper as a family. Well, point number 2 is the attitude of a fool. Let's go to Mark chapter 10.
Awesome, bro.
Here in Mark chapter 10, we'll look at the attitude of a fool. I was studying through last week about just the understanding of the word attitude. And attitude's pretty powerful. Oftentimes we can chalk up attitude as an intangible thing that doesn't really result in much, but it's just a way to think about things. And that's part of attitude. But the definition of attitude is a settled way of thinking. It's not just a way of thinking, it is a settled way of thinking. It means that in this thinking, you can find peace and you can find settlement by this thinking. And it typically then is reflected in a person's behavior. You know, the attitude of a fool, the settled way of thinking that's reflected in their behavior, is found here in Mark chapter 10, verse 27. Jesus looked at them and said, "With man this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God." And I think here's Jesus' attitude. Is that with man alone, there's things in this world that are impossible. My question is, do you believe in it? We live in a generation that says if you work harder, if you do more, if you make more connections, if you do this, you can do anything you want to do. And I support that message that we can continue to grow and flourish in our crafts. 100%. But we've got to have the attitude and the understanding of a fool for Christ, that there are very things in this world that are impossible for us to do without God. But the attitude, if you back up and say, wow, all things are possible with God, that's the attitude of Jesus Christ. And I got a little bit faithless. And I was like, man, there's nowhere to meet here. And Charlie's like, you know, you don't really speak like that. just in her sweet voice, that's not really like you to speak like that. I said, you're right. You're right. I'm going to be more faithful. And the more on Friday we kept looking into it, Joali was like, I don't know if there's anywhere for us to meet. And I'm like, sweetheart, we don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. And then she said, well, how about this place? Maybe we can call this place. And she found the Veterans Memorial Center. Literally within 2-3 minutes of being on the phone, about 30 minutes later, we were sitting down signing a contract with Peggy. And now we get to have this new place.
Come on, Peggy.
Why do I share that in relation to the scripture? I had to have the attitude of a fool. You know, in the world it talks, speak above people. Get above, be more powerful, be more condescending, get the last word in, and then you win. And with God, all things are possible with God, but there's just some things that are impossible with man alone.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, what if we all took on the attitude of having the mindset of being a fool that totally depended on God? You know, I think of Marvin and Natalie with little John here. And, you know, they have an infant. It seems almost kind of foolish to pack up in the car and come here to church, but they're fools for Christ. So they're excited to be able to worship God. I think of Jason and Whitney over here with the two little going on 6 months, going on 6 months with Liam and Olivia. And I think, wow, I always think of them like kind of like the Swedish chefs, like just trying to do all these things, like everything's flying in the air and they're carrying the babies. And somehow they're here, dressed and ready, with these beautiful little babies, because they're fools for Christ. I'm always blown away when I see Nick and Alicia put together at church, because they have their 4 beautiful children, and they're fools for Christ.
Yeah, that's right.
They're willing to travel, they're willing to do what it takes to get here and to be able to serve God's kingdom and God's people. I think of the people that come down from Corvallis. I think of the people who change their schedules to be able to put the kingdom first, because we are fools for Christ. What's it going to take to have more Bible studies? What's it going to take to see more people added to the kingdom? More people get baptized and more people crowd this room. It's going to take us being more and more foolish in our attitude of depending more and more on God and depending less on ourselves so that we can see God move in our day. Point number 3 is fools have goals. What's amazing about spiritual fools for Jesus is that fools for Christ have spiritual goals. Let's go here to Luke chapter 13.
Let's go, bro.
Luke chapter 13. I was looking through what it means for something to be a goal. And the definition of goal is the aim or desired result of one's ambition or effort. So a goal doesn't always have to be your ambition. Oftentimes a goal is something that can be achieved with your effort. Sometimes effort is not in correlation to your ambition. You know, God calls us to really deny ourselves and to put His will above our will. And when we have spiritual goals, we're willing to make God's goals found in the Scriptures our goals in our lives, and we're willing to put our effort and our ambition into God's goals and take those goals on for our personal ownership. In Luke 13, here in verse 31, it says, at that time some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to Him, leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you. He replied, go tell that fox I'll drive out demons and heal people today, and tomorrow and on the 3rd day I'll reach my goal. In any case, I must keep going. Today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside of Jerusalem. And I think about Jesus as, wow, what an incredible spiritual goal. Jesus' spiritual goal was to fully fulfill the Scriptures and end in death. That was His spiritual goal. And I think through it, and I look at Jesus in the garden, in Matthew 26, you can read it, 36 to 39. Jesus was very, very overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He pulls together the other disciples, He pulls together His prayer life, and He's able to get God's goal as His goal, and He's ready to go do the will of God. Because He's pulling people in His life, He's depending on prayer. and he's getting focused on God's goals above his own will. And I think of it for us. Do we have spiritual goals in our life?
That's good, bro.
I mean, not just spiritual goals, you also need to be able to have personal goals in your life. And personal goals shouldn't conflict with your spiritual goals. You know, so oftentimes people say that they have their personal goals, and they study the Bible and they see that God's goals for their life really interferes with their personal goals. And they come to this predicament. And they say, wow, do I have the faith to really surrender my goals in order to take on the goals of God? And any disciple of Jesus knows that hands down, this is the best way to live your life.
Come on, man.
You know, Jesus had clear spiritual goals. It was to fulfill God's scriptures. Jesus had religious people and influential people trying to talk him out of his own goals. But they weren't truly his own goals. They were God's goals. And what did Jesus' spiritual goals require? Required prayer, required other disciples, required faith, conviction, and everything that he had. And I was thinking through as a church, what if we all had spiritual goals that required this? What if you had goals that you knew they wouldn't happen unless you prayed about it? What if you had goals that you knew they wouldn't happen unless you had deep conviction? What if you had spiritual goals that required other disciples? You know, really to be able to win the world, there's no individual who's going to win the world by themselves. That's what's called selfish ambition. And you study out Jesus' ministry, and Jesus had the goals to really evangelize the world. And what is the first thing he did after he was baptized and went to the desert? He started building a ministry and making disciples of Jesus. You know, for us, when we study the Bible, we see very clearly what it means to be a disciple. And before we get baptized, we count the cost to understand that we are going to actively play a role in world evangelism. And to say that we are about to get adopted into a family all over the world that's united in conviction, that's united in faith, that's united in purpose. And it's going to require people being all in, and it's going to require finances to reach the world. You know, I'm so proud of the church here in Eugene. If you have your sheet there, on the back of it, you can see that by the grace of God, we've already raised 44% of our special missions goal for November. Over $2,000 in just fundraising. Cupcakes, car washes, bake sales, door knocking, all these different things. And to think that, wow, we are giving our heart and our effort in order to reach the world. Because that's exactly what they did in the first century. You know, what is it going to take for us to reach the city of Eugene? What's it going to take for you to reach your coworkers, the people in your town, the people in your surrounding towns? It's going to take prayer. Are you praying for the people that you run into? The people you're really going after in order to help them understand who God is? Are you praying for your coworkers? Are you praying for your family members? I mean, I'm so convicted when I look at Jesus. I need to pray more, guys. And so I'm excited for one of my spiritual goals, which is one of Kareem's spiritual goals. We were just hanging out the other day, and we said, you know what? I was just getting open about how I need to grow my prayer life. And Kareem and I were talking, and he said, you know, it takes a few weeks to break a habit. And he's like, maybe, you know, we were just talking about habits. And I was like, yeah, I heard that. And like 21 days, right? And, you know, he said, well, what if we prayed really for 21 days? And I think it was Kareem, he's like, yeah, what if we did it for 21 minutes each day? And then I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, what an incredible goal. And that's the goal that I'm going to take on. Is to say, outside of just my continual prayer, a prayer here, a prayer there, Joel and I get to pray every night before we go to bed. Well, it's a few times we say prayers. Don't want to be over righteous here. But we have a lifestyle of when we go to bed, we pray. And I was thinking about, I want to add on to my prayer life the 21-21 plan. For the next 21 days, spend 21 minutes in prayer alone, and I want to see what God does with that spiritual goal. But we came down and we said, wouldn't it be an awesome point in a sermon to say, are you doing a 21 plan or are you doing a 20 none plan? That's my question to you. Are you willing to make a 21 plan Or are you operating off of a 20-none plan? You know, excitingly, we have a goal of raising $17,000 for world missions. And really that goes to reach the foreign missionaries and really those who are really giving up their lives. I said the least that I'll do is, instead of going to the Middle East, I'll pay for their plane ticket. And then we'll be able to send them some money to be able to help them sustain the church out there. And I was thinking through it, that could be a big goal. But I'm grateful we had a goal because it motivated us to go tagging.
Yeah.
If you know what tagging is, we literally stand out with buckets and signs and we wave to the community and we ask them if they want to donate to world missions. And people throw money in the buckets. And I'm blown away still to this day that every time we go out, God allows us to raise like over $200. And we get to just send that to world missions. Well, excitingly, we had that goal of the $17,000, which motivated us to go tagging. And as we were out tagging, God put Elizabeth in our path.
Oh, yeah.
And now Elizabeth's been studying the Bible, and Elizabeth's excited to continue building her relationship with God. And I think it's safe to say that Elizabeth's encouraged pretty much everybody here. And she's become part of the family in an incredible way. You know, out in East Los Angeles, they were out doing some fundraising for missions, and they had a goal that they didn't reach. And so the next day they decided to go out, and God moved somebody's heart on the street to give them 15 $100 bills. And somebody literally gave $1,500 in cash, and they were able to reach their goal and impact world evangelism. And I think through, wow, what incredible goals have even come from Eugene. You know, from the Eugene Church, Tyler Sears was baptized, and Tyler Sears and his wife, they now lead the church out in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Yes.
From the church here, Jacob Bias and his wife Courtney, they now lead the church in Sacramento. Jeremiah Clark and his wife Julie were here, and now they lead the church in Denver. And Jeremy and Amy Chiamello were here, and now they lead the church down in Phoenix. And Eugene has played such an important role in world evangelism by giving up people. Eugene's also played an incredible role by sacrificing financially. And we're going to continue that because we have great spiritual goals to see this world one. But my question for you is, do you have foolish goals? I mean, do you have foolish goals that require prayer? That require your attention? If you have goals that it's easy to forget about, I dare say that's not really a goal. It's a hallucination. I once heard it said that vision without a plan is a hallucination. But vision with a plan is a goal that is going to be powerful because through God all things are possible.